engines for clients. So
Mm.
the service agency side of it comes out, we validate how common practices work for companies, what's kind of their offer, what's the direct workflow, those things. And then as we start to understand that, first we start to integrate no-code SaaS, pull everything and tie it back into the CRM and the database. So we're setting up listening tools for it. Once those things are built, the next optimal thing is to just start.
Interesting. And what role do you think, because this is really personal stuff, right? So this is like your personal experiences. How can LLMs or agents help enhance that? Will they ever be able to? Because what you're telling me is like the root of like good marketing, right? So that's basically how good marketing happens, is that you make people trust you and believe in you, that you are that person who knows you're an expert, and that you are sharing everything with them and they feel like they're part of the journey. How can
Yeah.
LLMs be a part of that?
And probably only 5 to 10% of that is leveraging direct AI agents for that specific workflow. But again, the longer you're running that and you're finding it work, my personal belief is within the next year to a year and a half, if I'm working with somebody for over a year, we'll have enough information that we can use an agent to completely replicate what the product instantly or smart lead would do for that client. And
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of What About AI Agents. Today with us we have Grady Teske. He's a founder of Rising Tides. They do growth marketing. He's a fractional CMO, a serial entrepreneur. He built companies like Dstaff and Contango Digital. So he's been in the space for a while. He's been building and scaling companies, running ads, and I can presume doing a lot of different CMO related things. So, Grady, I'll let you introduce yourself, and would love to hear a bit about what you're doing and what you're building and your work.
yeah, thanks for the time, Philippe, sorry. And I'm looking forward to learn from you as well. We're constantly looking at how can we integrate technology into customers' tools, into customers' growth stacks. As a CMO, I've led tech companies for about 7 years or so. Between myself, clients that I've worked on, the agency, I've helped to scale out over 250 B2B focused tech companies. And prior to that, I have almost a decade of experience in helping multinationals build North American subsidiaries. So I built teams for a long time. And then as a serial founder myself, the use of no code and technology, implementing that in business, AI is like a natural fit to looking at how can we get to where we need to go faster. How can we today? One of some of the questions we're trying to solve regularly with the use of agents is how can we build more effective focused teams where the human elements, the human proponents of it, are hyper focused on human interaction. So having that empathetic touch, using technology to drive in towards that, but at the same time, also having kind of the overview to guide the structure of what AI agents are doing for us and for clients. And so, as somebody who builds teams primarily, that's one of the questions that I'm looking to constantly answer. I think my long-term vision, like most of you probably expect, is that we're going to continue to see more and more AI agents implemented across company stacks. But what's the right fit of AI agent, human interaction to really develop and continue to build up what I like to consider like a customer-focused conversation environment? So yeah, that's what we're kind of, I would even say, obsessed with at the moment.
Well, yeah, it's like now everybody's talking about vibe coding, but like, do we still have vibe marketing? Where you just YOLO it and you let AI manage, like, $20,000 worth of Facebook ads or Google ads and see how that does. So, like, do you know there's agentic frameworks that already do that, like where they like literally replace a CMO? Is there something that's been built in that space?
Yeah, I'm consistently seeing both SaaS products, AI wrappers, and agents specifically that are like replicating a lot of the roles. And I think one of the top level, and basically, when people reach out to me, I'm game. Let's try it. Part of the building out the agency and launching Rising Tide is to be able to test out models and theories and technology at a larger scale across different industries. That's the whole point of having an agency, is to get that sort of experience, be able to see how things change across all of tech marketing as a whole, and then how you can apply it specifically to different industries. So I think, just today, I basically found somebody reached out to me with my entire agency and CMO practice model all wrapped up into one solution. So of course I'm going to try it, figure out where the value out of this is. Um, what's the part that we can replace? And in anything, honestly, my experience has led me to believe there's two areas that almost every business owner can implement AI today effectively and not have to worry about it. Number one is on the research and packaging part of almost everything you do, whether it's product building, whether it's writing content. The research and packaging makes all the difference between having your message go out and being seen, being like responded to by 20 to 30 people versus 20 to 30,000. Algorithms continue to drive the way we can get content out there in the world. And the better you can package it to fit in an algorithm, the better researched it is to not only be SEO focused, but also today, the new term I'm hearing is LEO, large language model and optimization. So we think about really writing and creating for that. So naturally, it makes a lot of sense to leverage AI agents to help take our thoughts, take what's working in conversations and repackage it in structures that they find. So that's a common thing we're doing is using it for structural. The other area we're finding a lot of use case in is anywhere you do automation, right? I'm a no code or visual builder. So it comes naturally for me to think about like any spot where I've got a workflow. What we do is we have, and again, with Rising Tides, our model is to build growth engines for clients. So the service agency side of it comes out, we validate how common practices work for companies, what's kind of their offer, what's the direct workflow, those things. And then as we start to understand that, first we start to integrate no code SaaS, pull everything and tie it back into the CRM and the database. So we're setting up listening tools for it. Once those things are built, the next optimal thing is to just start to build agents in to replace a lot of our interaction, to have somebody focused on those direct conversation points. This is really, honestly, it's not challenging for business owners to do. And really what you want to do, what helps you get there fast is creating, as you're leading up to the process of either using no code or using the AI agents, is to build a culture of documenting within your team. And we use AI for that too. Most of our experiences and interactions are done with clients either on a messaging tool, primarily Slack, WhatsApp, or Teams. And so we use AI to look at those conversations. We're using AI to pull documentation around our analytics, to create common questionnaires we can ask team members and the humans within it. So we start to regularly validate what we're doing and store all that information. And again, when we're ready, then we've got everything we need to start training an agent on what's been successful in this channel. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, well, I don't have time to implement today, I don't know that we've got the right opportunity, it doesn't really matter. The thing you can start doing regardless is capturing that data and storing it so that when you do come into an aha moment, you know that things are working, you already have all the information that can be trained so that you can scale quickly. That's one of the areas I suggest everybody start to look at and where you can make sense of it in your business today.
Yeah, and you have to set up basically your company-wide RAG, right? So you have to index everything you have, all your knowledge, and have these repositories with different levels of knowledge. You mentioned something about SEO, but large language model optimization. So how do we optimize our sites, our content for large language models to get index it in the best way so they can, so like ChatGPT can recommend my software versus my computer?
I wish I had a great answer today on exactly what that's working on. It's something that in the last few months has started to come out. We're hearing it more frequently. We're definitely focusing on it from our side, but we're trying to figure out what, as you mentioned, like what are the keys? Like we know how to use tools like SEMrush and Ahrefs, for instance, that help us build content and do research on content that's focused on SEO. Right now, we're taking those best judgments and we're actually kind of cross-applying how we're writing the material based off of how we'd present this through our outreach, email marketing, and like our one-to-one user communication models, kind of based around the idea that like the way that I see the continual expansion of web experience is that we're going to continue to see more and more the internet coming to the users, particularly with the use of AI tools like Perplexity. And more that coming to them has to be very conversational. So when we create content now, we're continuing to do the same research that we did that's optimizing for traditional SEO, but we're making sure that we're writing material and creating content that's very much built around like a conversational mentality, under the belief that as people continue to discover this, I think one of the things that AI is going to eventually do here, and again, we're just starting to test this theory out, is that content built for content's sake is going to be viewed just the same way that Google started to de-rank things as the internet became more expansive. They realized, okay, like creating all these fake backlinks just for the purpose of having backlinks is not a good tool. So they downranked some of that stuff, and they really started to increasingly focus more on engagement and value to the users. And so those are the kind of overhead things we're looking at today. But what I can tell you out of it is it's something that as an agency and as an individual, we're very focused on, particularly when we're creating content that's long form on LinkedIn or written into a newsletter or finally like put into a YouTube video. And this is an area I think of really great opportunity, because YouTube today, as well as Reddit and some of the groups chats that are out there, are continuing to rate content very highly. And again, that's very much conversational focused content. So if you're building along those models, we're trying to take that sort of presentational style and incorporate it into some of the more traditional like web pages, case studies, those sort of things, so that they become part of the conversation rather than being just a piece that's there to create an SEO ranking. That's one of the way that we're trying to address it. Thinking about like, as people's search becomes more personal, as it becomes more conversational, fit to their sort of environment, how can we craft our content so that it's reflective of that?
So, yeah, to your point that you were making, one of the most interesting things I've seen as a reflection of what you were just saying was some of the founders started to post their conversations with an LLM as their blog posts. So you have a conversation with an LLM that answers your question about a specific topic, and you post that as a blog post. I don't know if this is gonna rank, but I'm gonna try that. Maybe like do 100 posts like that of just like a conversation and LLM replying to you in that conversation, and then that kind of ends up being the, so instead of a person having that conversation, you have that conversation, and then it's kind of like
Yeah, I'm actually I'm actually writing a book about it right now called Build Distribution. And it's based on this principle that I have that like most businesses, even if you're a product company, you're a service company at heart. And what you ultimately are supposed to do is be building a conversation between who you think your ideal users are and the products that you have.
Right.
That's really the ultimate part of every business. And so as one of our main focuses as a team too, is we prioritize working with companies to help build out their outreach and email structure first. Because again, this is something that's easily, once we start to build these messages out, we can build the conversation. The scale of the amount of funnels that you can create and the audience segments you can do, it just doesn't ever end. But more importantly, it goes back to the theory we were just talking about related to content, is that more and more the internet's going to become more personalized, direct driven to users. Conversations will matter more. So I think long term, when I'm thinking about like, what can companies do? Well, if they own distribution, that like automated, scalable conversation model, then they can actually own their market in a way that as we see like agents take over, you're going to see less value in programmatic ads, for instance. We're doing a great job of using agents to place ads in places they couldn't before that follow the users around. But even more so, I think that, again, as we see the internet evolve and expand, agents in this personal driven internet experience is going to filter out a lot of stuff that's not relevant. So building around conversations and using AI agents to scale those is a great step one. But what it does then is you can build your content entirely along this conversation model as well. What I mean by that is we use the agents along with the humans to really focus on listening within these channels. What are the common objectives? What are the common things customers or ideal customers are telling us? This informs all the content we create. So a majority of the content that we're building out for us and for our clients now are really answers to common questions that are really built to be used in a conversational style. For instance, like we'll make a YouTube video, and then that way when we're scaling out our outreach or email funnels, we can use the YouTube video to be kind of our answer, so that within those conversation channels, rather than having to go over a 10-minute explanation of why AI agents work and how they're a real value to you, instead we can share that content that's conversational and then ask them, how would you see this being applied to your business? We turn it into a piece of the conversation. And at the same time, there's this cycle that you create now where those videos, that content is starting to drive more views. It's very conversational. It's also SEO and LEO focused. So we've really taken the time to figure out, based on this answers, what are the keywords to target. And it's going to start ranking on its own. So in this model, you're taking your conversations to inform your content that scales and allows you the opportunity to make the conversations more focused on the other side of the table. If you're familiar with Dale Carnegie's work too, Dale Carnegie wrote the book How to Win, or How to Create Success, I think it was, and win conversations. I'm getting the name completely wrong, but the key point that he tries to make is the more you can make conversations about the other party, the more you can open yourself up to them, having them dominate the conversation, the more they endear themselves to you, and they're more likely to align to whatever offer or solution you're providing. And so that's what our focus is. How do we create these conversations leveraged through AI that do that really drive listening more than anything? And on our answers are all built into content that we're hoping to place that'll be LEO focused over the long run, and will draw people into conversations based off of its, point of capture, the answers they're providing. So it's a little unique, but I think it's something we're having a lot of fun with, and we're starting to see success even today in personal brand building and creating authority for companies.
Right, it's a very interesting topic, especially considering the context that you mentioned of conversation amplification. I was just, thinking back to your kind of Slack thing where your teams are having conversations on Slack, and some of these conversations can easily be like ported over into Reddit, for example, and head on Reddit, and that would create then a very good influx. If it's an impactful conversation about the problem that you were trying to solve and then you solved it, then you somehow turn it into a Reddit conversation and a bunch of people post around it in a more amplified way. That would probably rank well on Google, which would end up in an LLM somewhere.
Yeah, and I mean, the goal ultimately is to make yourself feel as natural as possible. And one of the things that we're learning, and that I'm sure that you see on a regular basis, is the easiest way to do that is to, utilize, again, those conversations you have internally as a team, and then you build agents. We actually train all of the people that come in and do either reply work, so they're working within our funnels, or they do engagement work on our handles socially, so that's external. And then our sales team, we've built a bot, an agent that's trained on my newsletter, all of our internal documentation as a company page. And as I'm listening to you think this, I'm hearing the missing piece we don't have is we've been capturing all this data on Slack, and we haven't started training it on that as well. But we train it on that. So as people are in these customer or client or user focused audiences, they've already got very natural speaking tone that can do replies in the voice of the authoritative figure, which in my case is me, the founder. And it very much feels like it's part of the conversation because it's built on that. It's built on like how I'm sharing to my team. And then pairing that with a secondary agent, again, that like just really studies what's the best format, what's the right way to package newsletters. Let's perfect a structure for this individual's newsletter. Let's repackage it now as a YouTube video and the script for that, looking at what is the best ways to convert it. So you can take these then, and again, really repackage it quickly, makes cutting very easily. It's like if you're familiar with Opus AI, the tool that allows you to cut videos, it's not very challenging to have your own agent that you build to do that. And we've been using ChatGPT. We're now just transitioning over to use Perplexity to try different models. And our long-term vision of that is that, again, this is something really unique to our business. I think we're watching what NVIDIA is doing with onboard LLMs to be able to start to do this as an in-house environment so we can retain a lot of that and not share it with the public network. So, but it's just an amazing time to be working on this stuff.
Yeah. You mentioned about newsletters, and actually, I am really interested in like what makes a good newsletter. Like, how do you structure a newsletter? How do you send it out? I think many of our readers are tech founders, and they brush it off, and they have an email list, maybe 5, 10,000 people, but they don't send anything. Well, what's a valuable, if you can give some advice about valuable strategies for generation of newsletters and creation of them, and like what do we even send?
Sure. Sure. I think the way that the way that I think about newsletters is you have to think about, if you think in a traditional marketing sense, there's top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if anyone's heard of these terms, but basically top of funnel is farthest out, most entertaining. The whole design it's basically openers, right? It's your pickup line at a bar, or it's a hook in a newsletter, something that's going to get people to read and watch further. Middle of funnel is when you're really talking, that's the core of what you do. And in my model on this is like, this is just, if you don't know what to talk about here, talk exactly what you're doing and give it all away for free. Under the idea that like people will then utilize your product or your service because of the expertise and the authority you create. It's just like the thing with course sales, which has been like a popular thing over the last couple of years, it's not a done for you service. So a vast majority of people buy them and never actually put them in application. But if you're giving it away for free in your newsletter, which is a real simple way to think about a newsletter, you're going to get a lot of people that really understand, hey, this person and their team really understand what they're doing. I can go ahead and start this with themselves, but they're going to hit a roadblock, right? Where your expertise comes in or where your product comes in and takes care of it. So really, when you start to build out your newsletter, that's one of the keys I would say is think about what you're doing, break it down for free on a regular basis. Another really good piece of content here, again, because this is an audience that should already be aware of you. They're probably an active user or an inactive user, and they've tried you before. And the whole point is just to continue to build authority and also relative closeness. I think about like newsletters, you almost have to kind of think about it as being like a micro celebrity, and you're building authority within that and excitement around you. You want to give them enough information that they feel like they're close to you, but also kind of keep yourself up on a pedestal enough that like, it does have that like sort of, I think Tony Robbins is a good example, right?
Yeah.
Tony Robbins has lots of great content and people really respect him. And I think he's probably a very smart person, but one of the smart things he does is he knows how to manage that balance of like when to be the celebrity, when to have the content creation. And in one of those things, just like with Dale Carnegie, is when you hear about people and their exposure to Tony Robbins, they always talk about how he made a huge impact to them. And his take on it is always he's just listening because he's already said everything he needs to say. He's just listening and providing insight based off of what they're telling. So your blog or your newsletter, a lot of times I see people rush to turn this into a conversion tool. That's what email marketing for. Everybody that's in your newsletter can be remarketed with one-off emails or conversion-based opportunities or seasonal promotions and things like that. To me, the thing to do with your newsletter is, again, break down the services and then continually tell people what you're learning and what's changing. This is another huge bucket that I think drives a lot of value because, again, there's the consistency of always telling people what you do and breaking that down. That creates like a base level of authority of who you are. But continuing to tell them to see what you're learning, what you're thinking, allows them to grow with you, creates another level of endearment to them, but it also allows them to see like the mindset behind why you're changing your beliefs. So those are the couple of buckets that I really dip into. The other thing, as you mentioned, that we're really starting to do more now is we're starting to look at content that performs really well, particularly on LinkedIn, Reddit, and YouTube, and then turning our newsletter into a deeper thoughts version of that or a behind the scenes version of it. Essentially the same material again, but this is what it was like when I was building it out. And I'll also say the last tip I'll give on that is if you're thinking about a newsletter, one of the best times, I actually just wrote mine right before this podcast. One of the best things to do is schedule the time to write your newsletter or create breaks immediately after you do new customer calls or product service calls or exploratory calls. When you're actually getting involved in the thought provoking process of your business, I typically leave those and I create space so that I can do like a quick 20-minute breakdown, write up of what happened for the other party. And then for myself, I then do another quick 10 to 15 minute breakdown in a Google Doc about like what I think I learned, what was valuable, like looking at how the process has changed me. And then when you run out of ideas for your blog, this is where you go to. You just go back to these moments of like direct experience, and then you can translate that. And what does that do? That makes everybody feel like they're part of that process. They were part of that moment too. So yeah.
That's really, really interesting. And what role do you think, because this is really personal stuff, right? So this is like your personal experiences. How can LLMs or agents help enhance that? Will they ever be able to? Because what you're telling me is like the root of like good marketing, right? So that's basically how good marketing happens, is that you make people trust you and believe in you, that you are that person who knows you're an expert, and you are sharing everything with them, and they feel like they're part of the journey. How can
Yeah.
LLMs be a part of that?
Oh, they're a massive part of it. So when I say I just did my newsletter, I'll tell you exactly what I did. So I actually went to this week on the newsletter. I was thinking about a chapter that I wrote in the book, and so I went to the book. I used an AI tool, which is TLDV. It goes through the transcript, and using the search function of it, I said, "Look, I know I talked about this, and I wanted you to break down, give me all the clips from when I talked about this sort of thought." And also break down what my overall take was. So it gave me a quick summary on that. Then I took that and I rewrote it personally. And then I took that little section, it was probably about 2 paragraphs. I added it first into perplexity to look at common examples that I could use. Got some research on it that would support my ideas. And then I took that piece, put all of it into a OpenAI agent that we have that rewrote it, structured based off the tone and the structure of my newsletter, that every week, and every time I go in to rewrite it too, before I actually utilize this agent, I ask it what it's learned, where it's at now, and I try to give it a couple of other thoughts on where I wanted to take it further. So I ran it through that agent, and then I took it out of there and I rewrote it slightly again, changed some editing on it, and then that became my blog. So of what I did, I leveraged 3 different AI models to bring together this one piece. But, I don't feel like this is like not a creative tool. I mean, it's a creative hack, but it's not like it's replacing me, because what it's optimally doing is getting me quicker to the point of something that I wanted to say, built off of something I've already shared. And so this, to the point of where I think AI agents really are most valuable, they just bring us there faster on everything.
Yes.
So literally, I mean, as a CMO too, I'm kind of systems focused more than anything. So anytime I'm working any sort of flow, I'm always thinking about like, what can I do to make this faster and capture more? And the answer to almost every single one of those is AI. it's right now it's a Frankenstein monster of a lot of different agents doing different components. But again, I think when I think about my business as a whole, I know for sure that one of the things that we're already experimenting today, I don't want to say too much about, but like in the near future, within the next 2 to 3 years, and certainly faster, I think you're going to see a lot more of these agents as a service companies coming up, basically integration providers. And that's where I'm looking at like what we do as an agency model. The goal there is to help people systematize based off expertise. And the very next step would be then helping them build the tools to actually manage and run it on their own. So
yeah, agents as a service, I think, is the new software as a service. Where before it was just a wrapper on the database, now it's a wrapper on an agent. But it's more useful. Like, it's infinitely more useful. And I think I also agree with you. And we're building a few agents that we are like bringing to market in different niches. And I think if you pick a good vertical, you figure out what you want to do, something you're passionate about, then you'll be good. I had a question for you. You mentioned something about email marketing, and I know that these days email marketing became oversaturated because of things like Instantly, where everybody is now sending all those cold emails, and the open rates are dropping. People are complaining because everybody's landing in spam. So how do you navigate these things? It's becoming increasingly more difficult. It was much easier to send out like cold email 6 years ago, because nobody did that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say that I know that is some experience. That's not really my experience at the moment. I actually think email is actually becoming a lot easier to use. But again, there's a lot more into it. And I guess I would say this, that like I'm old enough to remember when the email marketing was like new and in vogue, and in pay-per-click was new and in vogue. And there's always the point here is when it comes to go to market, you look at a broader history and things always come in and out of fashion. And I think email marketing to me is something like billboards and like print postcards. There's still a very effective use case for them. But to answer your question directly, there is a lot more, I would say even more so on the outreach side of things, like using social tools for that. That's becoming more challenging than it is on emails. The kind of key there for what we see is really thinking about like structuring all of those conversation pieces. And we're just using technology. We have to think about, a sit down meeting at somebody's office or out in the field. What does that feel like? And that's how we build it as much as possible. So some of the keys that we try to always utilize in all of our outreach and email marketing is I try to get people to start. Again, if you want to really have a great breakdown, a lot of this is stolen from Dale Carnegie. Start every conversation from a point of yes, yes, yes. We want to move people into a point where they're immediately agreeable on things that are kind of common, but also focused on their business. So the key point here is we're getting them in that mindset. And we're also, even before we get to the yes, 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 we usually just come off from a very quick touch point of being like one sentence of being, we're a professional. We want to make an impact in your business. This is what we want to do. So right away, you can qualify or disqualify them on whether they're in the mindset to continue that conversation or not. So I think over personalization kills open rates. People are trying too hard to really get to people. Like when you actually think about it, if you were starting up a conversation at a trade show or in the field, you'd ultimately you have like 15 seconds to give somebody the gist of the value, and then they'll decide whether they want to get the conversation going. So you open really quick with that. And then from that point, really it's about making as much as you can. And this is the real challenge, making it so that all those social DMs or emails are really built around opening the customer up, getting them to answer. Like if you're doing a good job of optimizing your profiles, of having a good downstream like YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit, again, I keep going back to these three sources. People know who you are and what you do a little bit, or at least enough to know that they'll want to talk to you about it. So the key here isn't getting them into a conversation, telling them everything about you. It's very much asking them about kind of the things that are common about you, known about you, and how it applies to their business. The whole point is to get them to the point where they can expose an area of need and potentially quantify it, right? If you can get any conversation, I think any sales conversation to that point, then you're like 80% of the way to walking them in to like a close. One of the other things that we're doing now too is we're seeing that shifting these conversations from a point of like a sales focused mentality to shifting it to more of like an onboarding mentality is another easy way to do this, or a point of service and support, right? Honestly, anytime you're running campaigns like that, I think moving to a call is the best way to do it, because you can use technology to almost no extent, as long as people know that they're going to connect with a human at some point, or there's some sort of, and you can get around the call point as well too by having a strong content background and scaling out along that model. But moving to the port of onboarding where it's a supportive environment, again, where we're never really, as much as possible, you want to make it be listening, observing, and aligning rather than presenting. And I think that's just, again, you say this is broad, general stuff, but yeah, this is the kind of keys that make really, I hate to use the word optimizing, but it makes marketing and sales work, is turning it around to a customer-focused environment. There's a reason why that's such a big, marketing and sales sort of mentality or relationship building. So another kind of thing that we do is we try to think about, like, as we leverage more technology, how do we really focus on relationship building? Another kind of key top thing is don't think about email and outreach as a one-off thing. I read recently, and we're pushing this on our end, that you can continue to cold outreach an audience within 30 to 45 days. I believe that because I'm seeing it as the results in ours. Like it doesn't hurt. So what you want to do is, instead of really trying to do hard pickup lines, you're just pre-priming for the right time when you reach out and it makes sense. you're kind of warming up your personality, right? You're kind of warming up your brand. And then at some point, as long as you're staying consistent with what you're offering, those things will open up, or guess what? They're not really qualified as a good ideal user. And that's a reality too, is we have to think about a lot of what we're doing, less so as driving to a conversion or a sale, but also qualifying the right people to be working in our model.
That makes sense. One of the things I was actually thinking was, you take that list of like 100, 200,000 prospects and you start sending them a newsletter that they haven't subscribed for. And you do it in regions like where there is no GDPR or anything like that, so they can't come up to you. And then you just send it to them for like half a year, you warm them up, and then you start sending them offers. Like,
yeah, and you keep them. The other thing that helps too is you asked again about the newsletter. Content marketing is a valuable part of your product growth model too. Like if they're not ready or they're not in the right position, moving them into a newsletter where they may not open all the time, but still has that authority. Having again those three pillars, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Reddit, as areas where people can see you, and those are all highly sourced for search as well. Those things continue to add that value that gets them to the right point eventually. And again, like I said before, use agents to create a cycle that's always looking at those conversations you're having, looking at the outcomes of those email marketing, and identifying what are the topics and trends that we see that will inform our content that make us carry this over into the public sector. And that's where we can, as you're doing that, that's where you can make it easier and easier to turn things into, video that's supported by an ad that drives somebody into a landing page without the human close. And maybe you start the relationship, which is another thing I think we all love, or I'm really focused on, is how can I get people to execute as fast as possible and then figure out what we're doing together. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And to your point, it sounds very generic, but in reality, this is very hard to execute. And the execution of this and the finesse of being able to do this consistently, where it does build and trigger trust, is I think what separates like a good CMO from not a CMO.
And I think I appreciate that. And I'll say this too. One of the really common results from the agency model that we built is that like we start to realize as we're working with founders and teams on this, that the results we drive reshape the product significantly. It opens up new products. It changes the sales process quite a lot, because our ultimate focus is, and we've talked a lot about like the onboarding, the conversion, the outreach side of stuff. But ultimately this goes all the way through the product journey and goes into retargeting, nurturing, referral, and all those end of life sort of relationships that happen as well. If you're doing this, and again, I guess here's my thesis. If we're doing this and we're leveraging technology to bring us closer to who our ideal customers are and identify what that is, then ultimately what we're doing is we're creating lifetime revenue more than anything. That's my primary metric I'm always thinking about. And lifetime revenue, when you're using these systems properly, extend beyond products and revenue lines and businesses as a whole. They really start to build out around your personality. And so you have the ability to become like the Hermosis are now, where you've got, in just a short period of time, multiple companies, multiple products, all built around single audience sets, finding different ways through technology, service, product to create value for a user group. This is the future of, I think, most businesses. And increasingly, that means that it just means getting closer at scale and also directly with whoever you're is along the same wavelength as you. So the bottom line with all of that is you can't do that without agents. And certainly we're training our agents and people through culture on how to adapt and implement this in faster without, like you said, going back to an early question, what is LLM based search really look like? I don't know. We're defining it at the moment, and we're defining it by experimentation. And thankfully, we've got a good partner in AI that has the processing capability to really tell us what's working out of it and where to kind of keep anchoring in on. And the only way you can get to that point is consistently be executing and trying to put in new agents and abandoning things that don't work as fast as you go all in on things that do. So yeah, that's a model I think we just plan to follow.
Right. And I think like one of my last questions would be, so how much of your stack is currently like automated? Like how much automation do you have versus human engagement? Like what is the percentage, and what was it like 2 years ago, and what is it now? How much has that shifted on your organizations?
Yeah. So I will say that agents themselves are a smaller percentage of the stack, but again, we have the intent to continue to scale into it.
Mm.
It's increasing. I basically had an open job description and build out for my own LLM and like an agent trainer for a while, and I keep shaping it based off how we're using stuff. It's just we continue to find that like external products like AI wrappers and tools that embed AI agents are making us get to a certain stage fast enough. What I really think about when it comes to that is like I think it was Klarna was the big company that if you're scale already at the enterprise level today, you probably have enough data and use that you can integrate and directly start to replace things with agents. If you're not at that point, you should be experimenting as much as possible with these pieces. So
Mm.
how much has it changed? We've been using no code generally in my marketing stacks for at least the last 4 to 5 years. Particularly because we work with tech-based clients and we worked a lot in like Web3 on the decentralized infrastructure side of things. And so like, again, there's a natural fit to using compostable product across funnels. It's hard to say like how fast we're adopting because like we literally say yes every time we can. And every time we finish with things, we're also asking like, how can we use, AI and tools to make this faster? But what I will tell you is that we recently made a pretty large shift within our organization and how I staff companies that I don't use generalists anymore at all. And
Mm.
in fact, we're finding that like we can now staff one generalist role after we've got them up and executional and we kind of know broadly how things are working. Today, a generalist probably utilizes like I would say if you look at email marketing, for instance, you're probably utilizing AI for the audience building, for the copywriting creation side of things, as well as like running. I mean, most of these tools like Instantly and Smartly are basically AI wrappers at this point too. So 60 to 70% of that is now already done by AI automation. Whereas we had a generalist about a year ago. Just recently now we split that whole category up into three really distinct roles. And each of them is doing probably 5 to 10% of what the overall role was before. But then they're also able to have better visibility and do like more management than they were before. So that would say if I'm really breaking it down, like right now, at least 80% of each sort of growth engine that we're building for someone is built around integrated AI, whether it's part of a SaaS product. And probably only 5 to 10% of that is leveraging direct AI agents for that specific workflow. But again, the longer you're running that and you're finding it work, my personal belief is within the next year to a year and a half, if I'm working with somebody for over a year, we'll have enough information that we can use an agent to completely replicate what the product Instantly or Smart Lead would do for that client. And so that because all those tools are scheduling tools and contract management and integration. So like you can take the functions of that and have an agent manage a lot of that aspect and break down the UX of using Instantly, Smart Lead, and all these other components. So I think within a year, you're going to see close to 95% of any sort of marketing process entirely done by technology. And really, again, the focus is around having people that have the oversight to optimize along with the agent on how things are running, but also to be there to be that human presence that still makes it feel like a person to person interaction, which is what we all crave.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think, like, in a sense, that companies like Instantly will be replaced by agents who do exactly what Instantly does, but you don't have to fiddle with the UI because there is no value in fiddling with that UI.
Yeah, UI is going to completely go away. I think I don't know how
You're
much
gonna go
people
back
really
to
think about
terminals.
it.
That's good.
Well, I think again, one of the things that my experience in Web3 particularly kind of refreshed my mindset. I've been thinking for years about what's the next common experience. Social feeds was the dominant one for at least a whole generation. And we're pretty much, in my opinion, we're already past that, but I don't think a lot of people have realized that. I think the moving forward dominant experience, well, people can call it the prompt model. I think it is really the direct, it's when I think about prompts, I think about it not in the AI sense. I think about it in the sense of like, prompting a system, doing no code, using that. So it's really more of a developer sort of language model that's become easier with AI, because now you don't have to be as precise with the vernacular of how we're prompting, but it's still that. Like, I think increasingly that's where everyone moves back to. And when I see younger generations using, even my kids, like, it's, again, I don't want to date myself, but I remember putting in DOS prompts to get the programs to work. And that's the behavior that they're using now. And I think about like, wow, this is what a short loop
Full
we had
cycle,
to come back
full
to
cycle.
that.
I remember I was starting those games like in the DOS and stuff like that, and you had that blue screen where you could pick stuff, but it was easier to just type. And
and where even the game experience in a lot of cases was just a series of prompting, and you had to use your imagination. But I do think like increasingly, short of really having any VR AR experience that really does take over, which could still, but there's a lot of issues for adoption of that. Even that, all of it, I think, is going to be starting to be increasingly be based more around like a personalized prompt model that we just kind of haven't fully defined yet, but you can see the breadcrumbs here. Yeah. So I think.
So to kind of wrap things up, maybe you can tell some people, so they were listening to this conversation, they think you're a really smart guy, and they want to work with you. How do they approach you? What does it look like in terms of cost, and how can they get started?
Yeah, so we have. I've built out an ecosystem of opportunity around me. I like to use that term. Basically, to make sure that we've got products, content, or free opportunities to be able to connect with me, so that, because I work with tech companies, and I know that like there's the time when you want to get ready and get started versus the time that you are fiscally. Oh shoot.
Well, we'll give it a minute. Yeah, well, it was a great conversation. I think we learned a lot. There is, there's so much. I feel like he's coming back and just you can always hey Grady.
Yeah, welcome sorry back. About that. I've been trying to run out the end of life on my computer so I can get a new model that has like an onboard LLM built into it. So it's a processing problem on my system. Sorry about that. But I'm glad that it happened on my call to action. So we can cut it and put it back over again. If you want to start from the question point, then I'll
start from the question. So Grady, what can you tell to the people who are watching this? They listen, they think you're a very smart guy, they want to work with you, they want you to help them, drive growth for their company. They maybe raised a seed round and they're looking to partner with somebody. So when should they reach out? Like at what funding stage? What does it look like in terms of like commitment on the financial side? Just tell us a little bit about how do we get a chance to work.
Sure. So first and foremost, I want to be a fractional CMO. I like to get deep in with a couple of companies a year and help build your team and your process. So that's my ideal place to work with you. So usually that happens when you're at a stage where you've got $1 million to a couple $1 million in annual revenue. You've got a couple people on the team when you're moving again away from a generalist and starting to build out a departmental approach. Or in real layman's terms, a lot of times it's when people are going for their Series A rounds, right? That's optimal. If you're earlier than that, that's what our agency is for. I built the agency to help companies that are early create non-siloed go-to-market departments in both marketing and sales. And what we do is we like take email marketing or paid acquisition. They take the standard best practices for it and they apply it under a model of how does this work to increase conversation between you and your ideal users. In that model, we've got a budgeted cost point that's month-to-month subscription, fully guaranteed. It's really no commitment. And what they're doing is we execute as an agency, we document how it works, we apply and integrate the technology. And then as you scale out with us, when you're ready, they'll help you hire in somebody to come in and take over and manage the system that's done for you. And the reason why I think it's so important is like, for instance, we can do things at that point, like custom building your CRM integrations and making sure your data set is lined up so that you're not only just getting the results of an agency work or a contractor work, but you're actually building an investable sales model or growth model that you can turn if you're raising money, or you can continue to put in money as a business owner. So that's the most ways that companies come to work with us, and that's through risingtides.io is the best way. If you're looking for a direct advisory relationship, you can go to gradyteske.com. And I have, again, my, or on my LinkedIn or any of my social profiles, I've got ways that you can either get to a free advisory call or getting to a paid call. Generally, we like to do that first so we can establish how good of a fit it is for you. Because my most important thing is, if you couldn't tell, is a lot of these things are standard marketing and sales ideas. I like to take the general ideas of what works and what learns and figure out how we apply it to your business. So identifying fit is a really great way. Beyond that, certainly follow me on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and Reddit. Again, those are the places that we're constantly giving our stuff out top of funnel. And we filter down into my newsletter, which is weeklyinvoice.com. That's giving the behind the scenes footage. That's where I'm sharing less about like how you make email marketing work for you and more about like what I'm seeing from how we're applying tech, AI, these new models of company growth to specifically email marketing and what's changing this month. So in real quick order, what I would say is those are the 3 offer points we have today. I'm usually trying to give it all away for free. So find me on LinkedIn at Grady Teske, YouTube at Grady Teske. You can find my newsletter, weeklyinvoice.com. And again, if you're looking for direct agency services, please reach out at risingtides.io. All we're really looking to do here is help you take hopefully what's already working, build a system around it that scales fast, and really create the authority that's going to drive conversations between you and the people that you think are going to be the best fit to build your product. And then we figure those things out and help drive revenue.
Amazing. So there you go, everybody. This is Grady Tesky. He's a really smart guy, and I think you should all contact him. And if it's a fit, if you need somebody to help you scale, I think that's who you should go to. Thank you for being on the show, Grady. I really appreciate that.
Yes, thank you as well. This has been great. And as you can tell, we're really passionate about AI. So I love to get a chance to talk about this. I maybe spilled a couple secrets about where I think things are going. So hopefully you watch this and you're directly implementing it. And then you can come back to both of us and tell us what worked for you, because that's ultimately why we do this. I think we just want to learn and be on the cutting edge of stuff. And that's what keeps me alive anyways. So thank you for the opportunity to join today.
And thank you for being on the show, Grady. Thank you, everyone.